Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to our Facebook page on enriching relationships that matter most. And today, Coach Diana and I are going to talk about boundaries. Boundaries, are they selfish? And before we begin, you know me, and I always like to know that I'm not talking to just myself and Diana. And so we want to know that you are here. So could you give us a shout out on Facebook and just let us know that we are live, that technology has worked its magic, and on YouTube that we are here and we are live and we're ready to roll, because we don't want to start sharing all of this information that we have with you and hearing back from you if there's nobody there. So Tasha, thank you so much for letting us know that you're here. Good morning. And we're so excited to share with you about boundaries because I think it's one of the most misunderstood concepts. I know that Cloud and Townsend wrote this great book, Boundaries, and have written subsequent books on that, but I still find so many people misusing and misunderstanding the term and not actually sure about how to implement it. And probably more than that, feeling scared because they feel like it's not biblical, like somehow it's selfish, somehow it's wrong. And so put in the chat a definition of selfish. We would love to hear what you think is selfish. What's a definition of being selfish? Hi, everybody. We see you all showing up. So glad to see you, Stacy and Nancy and Sonia and Mary. I was just telling Diana that my feed usually says Facebook user, but today everybody's names are on there. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Just one word of warning here. This is my public Facebook page. So be careful in your comments about anything personal, just so that you know it's on Facebook. We have private groups and we will talk about that in a minute, but this is my public Facebook page. So we welcome you all here. We are talking about our boundaries, selfish today. And so we started with the question, put in the chat, what does it mean to be selfish? So Lisa says self-absorbed. Lisbeth says only thinking of myself, always putting yourself and your desires first, not caring for others. Okay, caring only for your own self. Good for you. Selfish, saying I don't care. I'm going to do what I want. Only thinking of yourself with no regard of others, not considering other people, thinking only of yourself. Wonderful. So you've got it. So you know what selfish is. So let me ask you another question. Is thinking about yourself selfish? Is thinking about yourself? You've said thinking only about yourself, but when you need to take time to think about yourself and who you are and what you like and what you don't like and what you want and what's important to you, is that time that you spend doing that selfish? Is that selfish? Okay, Tasha says no. Anybody think it's selfish? All right. Anybody think it's selfish? Because this is part of what boundaries is thinking about who you are. And I have two stories that I'd like to share, and Diana probably has a few too, about experiencing boundaries. So most of you probably are moms here. And when your child is an infant, they don't have a boundary. They were inside of you and they are still a part of you. They see you as them. They don't think of you as a separate human being. They don't think of themselves as a separate human being. They're fused with you even after birth. They're fused, okay? And they see their needs as penultimate. They don't think about your sleep. They don't care about your sleep. They don't care about anything. They're very selfish and they're very self-absorbed, as they should be as an infant. That's what's required in order for them to scream loud enough to wake you up and say, Mom, I don't care if you need sleep. I need to eat, right? And so an infant is in this place of fused with the mother. They don't have any boundaries. But how do you know that an infant is starting to become a separate person? Well, they develop a little word. And what's that word? Put it in the chat. What's the word that they develop that you know now that they see themselves as separate from you? What's the word? Anybody have an idea of what your little one develops around the age of 2? The word that helps them see, Karen got it. No. Lizette got it. No. I'm not going to eat those peas. No, I'm not going to come when you call me. I'm going to run the other way. And now they see themselves as separate from you. Is that selfish or is that part of maturity? So that's what a boundary begins to do, is it says, this is me and this is you. And so when a child starts to mature, which they should, they're starting to say, hey, I'm different than you. I don't like peas, Mom. Don't feed them to me anymore. I'm not going to open my mouth. I want to do this, even though you want me to do that, right? And so they begin to develop an I. We would expand that to an identity. This is who I am, and this is who I'm not. This is who you are. That's the beginning of boundaries. So the second story I want to share with you is we just sold a property, my house in Pine Top. We have a little cabin there, and we sold it. And in the sale, our neighbors were kind of concerned that we didn't have clear property lines because they thought their driveway was on our property and that the new people would use their driveway because they thought it was their property. And so we had to get a person out to survey and do all that to make sure that our property lines were well marked and that their driveway wasn't on our property lines, or we weren't violating their boundaries, right? And so boundaries help us do two things. We'll start there. Boundaries help establish identity. This is my property. This is your property. This is my driveway. This is your driveway. Here's the property line. It helps. This is my house. This is your house. This is my body. This is your body. These are my feelings. These are your feelings. These are my thoughts. These are your thoughts. These are my needs. They're different than your needs. Does that make sense? Diana, anything else that you want to add to how boundaries create identity?
Well, if we don't know what it is that we want, think, need, and feel, we can't really establish boundaries. So a part of establishing our identity is really clearly understanding what's okay and what's not okay with you. And I think that when we do boundary work, that's the first thing that we're going to ask ourselves: does this matter to me, and does it not?
And here's where the Christian teaching can get a little confusing. Because if it matters to me and it doesn't matter to someone else, so let's say it really matters to you that you want to save money for retirement, and it doesn't matter to your husband. He wants to spend money willy-nilly and doesn't care if you go into debt because the world's going to end anyway. And so who cares if he, has any retirement money, and that's his thinking, and your thinking is different. Is it selfish for you to have a boundary around some money issues? Is it selfish for you to speak up for yourself about what you need or what's important to you? And this is where it gets really tricky in the work that Diana and I do with women in destructive relationships, is that sometimes under the guise of submission, we're to erase our identity. Like we don't have a no anymore. We don't have a right to think differently or want different things or have different needs. So you can see how this starts to get really messy in boundary work when boundary is about identity. This is who I am. This is what's important to me. And sometimes as women, we never really even do that work. We just kind of think, all of our work is exterior. How can I get people to like me? And I want friends and I want boyfriends and I want to have fun and I want to do all this stuff and career and all that. But we're not really thinking internally about who we are, what's okay with us and what's not okay with us. And are sometimes even afraid to express it. Like how many of us have been afraid to express even to a girlfriend, hey, it's not okay with me that you show up 30 minutes late every time we make a date together. Every time we're having lunch, you cancel at the last minute. That's not okay with me. And we're afraid to say that, right? I mean, at least I've been. Anybody relate?
I think using our voice and in places where we've lost our voice. And you mentioned being afraid to speak out. And I think oftentimes when we get married, especially as women, and we look to unite with another individual, there's an opportunity there for us to maintain our individuality or to lose it under the guise of submitting. And I think that what I've experienced, Leslie, in working with our women is that often we've lost really even the knowing of what's valuable and important to me. So reestablishing identity and then asserting it is all a part of really healthy boundaries. Mm-hmm. And it might feel, and often we say it feels selfish if you're not used to doing it, right? Mm-hmm. And then often we can be manipulated by others when they push back against our boundaries, and we might feel guilty or selfish. So those are all things to kind of listen for, but it really, really is appropriate to establish who God's called us to be and what we value, what we don't value.
Yeah, and I think that this is our challenge. And so we're going to do not a global, but a challenge in our organization called Moving Beyond. And this challenge is going to start in a week and a half on June 20th. All right. So we're going to talk a little bit more about boundaries in a second, but let me tell you about the challenge and how you can join, because Martha's put it all in the chat and you're probably thinking, what is all this for? So let me tell you how to join. You can go to Moving Beyond, Leslie Vernick Challenge. I erased that. Why is that on? Don't worry about this only for non-conquer. I'm not sure why that came back, but just go to leslievernick.com/challenge. And what we want to teach you is that in this challenge, a lot of times we feel kind of, hold on, I'm going to change it now because it bugs me that it's there. All right, save, that's what happened. I didn't save it. There we go. Sorry. All right. So what happens a lot of times is that we get stuck in our usual ways, the ways we do things. And we're not really, we think, oh, I need to start losing weight, or I need to start exercising, or I need to start having boundaries, or I need to start sticking up for whatever it is. Could be, I need to start reading my Bible, whatever it might be that you want to do. Here we are, June 2022, and you still haven't started, or you still haven't stuck with it. And so every June we've been doing this challenge. It's called Moving Beyond. It's going to start June 20th. We invite you to participate. So we're going to talk about 5 things that women get stuck in. One of them is boundaries. So the first one is moving beyond overwhelm. Why do we feel so overwhelmed? Because we don't have good boundaries, right? And so we're overwhelmed. And so we're going to talk about that Monday, June 20th. We're going to get on our private Facebook page, which I'll tell you about in a minute. We're going to give you a tool to move beyond overwhelmed. One of my coaches and I will be in the Facebook group for 1 hour to coach you through this overwhelmed feeling, as well as overwhelm in your house. If your house is a mess and you don't know where to start because you're overwhelmed, we're going to give you a system to begin to organize your internal world as well as your external world into a way to manage it so you don't feel so overwhelmed. Day number 2 on Tuesday, we're going to do the same thing. You're going to get an email if you sign up for the challenge in the morning saying, okay, today's day is moving beyond negative thoughts and bad moods. How many of us have negative thoughts and bad moods? Let's raise our hand. Let's be honest. I was on a group Zoom teaching this morning, and it was a wonderful teaching. And there was this person in the chat who was having all kinds of negative thoughts, and he was verbalizing them in the chat. This isn't working for me. This is a piece of garbage. I don't know what he's talking about. I'm not getting this. This isn't right. And I'm thinking, wow, he's infecting the whole chat with his negativity. And so sometimes we get negative and we don't know how to deal with that. We don't know how to even be aware of it. That sometimes I said to him, maybe what you're thinking isn't, it's limiting your experience to participate in the group, right? And so sometimes we have these limiting beliefs and we don't even know it. So day 2 is identifying our negative and limiting beliefs and bad moods and how to move beyond them, how to move beyond these things so they don't cripple us for our day, for the morning, for the year, for the rest of our lives. We've lived so long with negative self-talk. And then we're going to hop on the Facebook page again. Not this one, but our secret for private Facebook page just for people who join this challenge. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to coach you through that specific topic about negative thoughts. Day 3 is moving beyond your fear of failure. Day 4 is moving beyond your unrealistic expectations. How many of you have an expectation that someone will respect your boundary? Right? That's your husband or your mother or your friend will respect your no, and they don't. And what do you do with that? How do you move beyond your unrealistic? They might be reasonable expectations, but they might be unrealistic considering your husband or your mother or your friend. How do you move beyond that? What do you do with that? And then our last day is moving beyond people pleasing, which is the mother lode of lots of issues in destructive relationships. And so if you are a card-carrying, compulsive, chronic people pleaser, you are going to want to be a part of this challenge. And so that will be Friday. So Monday through Friday, June 20th through June 24th, we are doing this challenge. It's a paid challenge. You're going to have to put some skin in the game because we are going to be present 1 hour every day in a private Facebook group so that you can get your questions answered. You can get some coaching back and forth from us on your stuck places. And We want people to show up who are really interested in doing the work. And so you got to put some skin in the game. It's $17 for the whole week. It's not $17 a day, $17 to be a part of this challenge. We invite you to go look and see what's involved, what the Facebook page looks like, how often we're going to be there. We're going to be there every day for an hour at least, me and one of my coaches to help you through that next step, next step, next step, next step. So please head over there to sign up. But let's continue our conversation about boundaries, because boundaries are so, so critical. And Diana and I were talking before our opening about boundaries with yourself. How many of you set boundaries on yourself? How many of you set boundaries on yourself? Anybody? And what is your boundary for yourself? Like, I have a boundary for myself. I do not use the F word. Just don't use it. I don't care how mad I am. I don't care how I might think it, but I don't use it. I don't use the F word. I've never said it to anybody out loud. Even when I'm all by myself, I don't say it out loud. It's just a boundary. I don't do this. I don't do this. I don't eat certain things. I don't eat Talenti's ice cream anymore because I found myself eating like a half a pint every night. I don't eat it anymore because I'm not good at just eating a bite. I want the whole thing. And so I just don't eat it. So I have certain boundaries of things that I do or I don't do. I exercise. I don't eat certain kinds of ice cream. I don't say the F word. This has nothing to do with putting a boundary on anybody else. It's my own personal boundaries. Talk some more about internal boundaries, and why they're important, Diana.
Mercy, I don't think that we can steward ourselves well if we don't have some boundaries with ourselves, because we're not really clear about what we should be doing or what matters to us. So I often say I can't set boundaries on others until I really know what's significant to me. And I can't live a life well lived if I'm not setting some boundaries around what I'm going to do, how I'm going to behave. And I have some really strict boundaries that are different than my spouse. We both work in the house here. And it's hysterical because his office is right next to our bedroom. And literally, he gets up in the morning and he crawls into the office and he starts his calls. He doesn't do video calls, only often, not often. And in the morning, it's really important to me whether I work or not. I do my hair. I do my makeup. I dress up because I'm doing it for me. It's not for anyone else. No one told me that I had to do it, but it's how I steward myself and feel good and start my day. Boundaries that we set with each other. And I can't control whether or not he sets his boundaries, but I said the last one out of the bed makes the bed, because I've read that successful people start their day with their beds made. And for me, it makes all the difference. It doesn't matter to him. So he respects that for me, mostly. But I have so many boundaries, Leslie, that I've set with myself. I've just learned what works for me. And other people are different. During the winter, we had talked about this a little bit before on a broadcast. During the winter, I'm really adamant about putting on my light so that I get some sunlight, because I function better that way. And so if you don't have boundaries around yourself, I think that you get a little bit confused, and then you may not be living your life best lived, I guess.
Yeah, so we've gotten a lot of questions in the chat about boundaries, and I just want to address one because I think this is really important. Heather is asking, if we can't control them, which we can't, how do we uphold our boundaries with a destructive person? In other words, it's not okay that you ignore me, but I can. I'm not sure what, but I can. So this is really important because I think we've misunderstood what boundaries are. Yeah. Okay, so let's just take it into an abstract. So it's not okay with me that my neighbor doesn't mow their grass, right? It looks horrible, or they don't clean up their yard. It's not okay with me, but I have absolutely no power to make them do what I want them to do. So it can't be a boundary. It's just it's an awareness what's not okay with me. So now what do I need to do? Do I need to put my house up for sale? Do I need to have a conversation with my neighbor? Do I need to offer to help because it bugs me so much? Do I need to call the city to see if they can do something with a law. So I can't make my neighbor do something in his yard. That's his responsibility, right? I can't make him do his responsibility or treat me nice. I can't make someone do that, all right? So this is the tricky part about boundaries. This is why it's so important for us to first clarify it's not selfish for you to have them. And it's not selfish for you to enforce them, but you have to make sure what them are, because it's not a boundary to say you can't have a messy yard, right? It's not a boundary to say you can't treat me that way, because you have absolutely no power to enforce that, right? All you can say is, this is who I am. I won't be around a person who cusses me out. Mm. All right. So if they don't respect that, or I won't be around a person who smokes, right? I don't want to be around a person who smokes. I don't want to smell that secondhand smoke. So let's say my husband smokes, or let's say my best friend smokes, and I can't control whether they smoke or not. That's not my responsibility, right? So identity and responsibility. It's not my responsibility to mow their yard. It's not my responsibility to stop their smoking, but I don't like it. So now what can I do? So I can say to my friend or my husband, hey, I know you like to smoke and that's your responsibility, but I don't like to be around secondhand smoke. So you decide whether or not you want to smoke around me. But if you smoke around me, then I'm not going to be here. I'm not going to go in the car with you. I'm not going to be in the house with you. So if you don't want to honor my boundaries, there's a consequence that I need to take responsibility for me. And this is the hard thing, because we're so used to thinking I can set a boundary on you. You can't treat me this way. You have to clean up you have to make the bed. You can't make your husband make the bed, right? Mm-hmm. My boundary is I want a bed made every day. I'll negotiate with my husband to see if he'll cooperate with what I want. And if he doesn't and doesn't care about it, I make the bed every day. I make the bed 95% of our time, because it doesn't matter to my husband either. And it's not something he really wants to spend his time doing. Now that he sees the benefits of having a bed made, he actually is making the bed more. So I think there's something that you have to understand about boundaries, and that you can't make someone do what you think they should do to make you feel happier. You have to take care of you.
It's about choosing how we respond with what we want and what we need. And when someone doesn't respect that, we always have the choice about how we want to respond to their not respecting our boundary. But we can't enforce the boundary on them. And so I think that's where we get a little bit confused is, well, okay, so if he's not treating me well, or this person's yelling or cussing me out, what will I do? And we often step into, I don't know, frustration, or maybe kind of just frozen. We don't know what to do. But that's where we use agency and identity. If I have agency and I know what my identity is, and my identity is not to sit in the face of someone who behaves this way, then I get to choose how I will respond. So it takes a bit of thinking it through, right? What will I do if this doesn't work for me? And strategizing. If someone's drinking and I'm out with them and it's my policy and my boundary, I don't drive with anyone who's drinking ever. For me, that's just a boundary that I set. I don't think it's just not. It's a responsible thing for me. So if I'm out with a friend or a family member and they've had a drink, what will I do? I'll choose to drive. I'll drive separately, but I can't enforce that boundary on them and say, just because you drove, you can't drink. I need to think about those things ahead of time or be proactive in the moment. But you always have the choice on how you will respond and react when someone doesn't respect or hear your no. And and we don't want to be reactive. We want to be responsive.
And these are tough things to learn. And I think a lot of Christian women have been very disappointed in that they've tried to set some boundaries, but they've set them in a way that makes them powerless to follow through. So it's not, you can't talk to me this way. It's, hey, who am I? What will I listen to? What won't I listen to? What kind of conversations will I participate in? What kind of conversations will I not participate in? And so when those conversations start deteriorating, like crazy making conversations or gaslighting conversations, you can't say to them, stop gaslighting me. They're not going to do that. Or stop talking to me, stop cursing at me. They're not going to do that. I mean, you could say that in a healthy relationship, right? And most people would stop. Hey, your smoking is bothering me. Could you smoke outside? And they would, because that is a healthy interaction. But we're talking about people who don't respect your no. What do you do then? This is where you need to take, this is part of boundaries and part of self-stewardship that we talked about. It's not selfish. That's what we started with, is boundary selfish. This is where you need to take responsibility for yourself and say, I'm not going to let myself be talked to this way. So now what do I need to do? Maybe I need to say nothing. Maybe I just need to end the conversation by not engaging, so we don't continue the conversation. We just say, I can't continue this conversation. I won't continue this conversation this way. It's not good for me. I won't stay here if you're going to continue to smoke. I'm going to have to go outside, or I'm going to have to go in the other room, or I'm going to have to get a different house, right? If you don't want to smoke outside, I'm not living in a house that's full of secondhand smoke, right? And these are tough choices, but this is where, but you don't have to say it mean. You don't have to call them names. You just state your truth. Just like if you were at a restaurant and someone said, oh, try this lobster, and you're allergic to shellfish. You would say, no, I'm not doing that. That's not good for me. You wouldn't say, oh, don't tempt me with lobster. You would just say, I'm not doing that. That's not good for me. And that's your boundary. I don't eat lobster, right? Not that you can't offer me lobster, or you can't try to convince me to eat lobster, or you can't make fun of me because I won't eat lobster. They can do whatever they want to do. And then you decide whether you want to hang out with them or not. And that's the clarification of boundaries. And that's why it's so important that you understand that it's not selfish for you to do that. It's not selfish for you to say, hey, if you're going to play with fire, if you're going to take drugs, we're going to go to extreme now, I'm not going to be around you. And we might not even say that. We may just choose to do that if we're in a friendship with someone. Mm-hmm. But that's part of self-stewardship, of taking care of you. Can you think of any examples where Jesus set some boundaries? He certainly said no.
Well, I imagine he set a lot of boundaries about what he said and what he didn't say,
Right.
To others and about others, using wisdom. That's a big area of stewardship. Mm-hmm. And self-care really is how I will speak, mm-hmm. how I will speak to others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So what I want to do is I'm going to answer some questions about the challenge. I see a lot of them in the chat. So let me just answer some questions about the challenge, and then we'll continue our conversation about boundaries, okay? If you have some questions about boundaries, I'll answer those next. But let me answer the question about the challenge first. The challenge is going to start June 20th, Monday, June 20th. If you sign up for the challenge, then you'll be in the challenge. If you don't sign up for the challenge, it won't be on this public page. It'll be on a secret Facebook page and via email. But if we don't have your email and you don't have given us permission and paid for the challenge, you won't be a part of it, which is totally fine. But we don't want to bombard our email list with all this stuff if you're not interested. The challenge will last 5 days, 5 days for $17. And so the first day is moving beyond overwhelm. Day one, you will get something in your email that says, hey, everybody feels overwhelmed from time to time. Here's a step that you can take to move beyond overwhelm. Try this, all right? And I'm not going to tell you what it is, and it'll give you some very specific steps to take. I want you to try them Monday morning. Then Monday afternoon at 4 p.m. Eastern time, you're going to hop on the private Facebook page that we have just for this challenge. And myself and one of my coaches will be there with you for the entire hour from 4 to 5, if not longer, coaching you with your questions about your experience, putting into practice that little tip that we told you in the email. We're also going to expand that in the Facebook page about how do we deal with emotional overwhelm in preparation for our day 2 challenge, moving beyond negative thoughts and bad moods. You'll get an email Tuesday with what to do when you have a negative thought and bad mood, how to recognize it, what to start to do with it. Then we'll come on Facebook, and that time will be Tuesday at noon Eastern time on our private Facebook page. Me and one of my coaches will be there for at least an hour, coaching you through that stuck place of, yeah, but I told myself that I still had this negative thought. Now what, right? So we're going to talk about that specifically on Tuesday, the 21st. Wednesday, you're going to get another email about moving beyond the fear of failure. How many of you don't do something juicy and exciting because you're just afraid of failing? right? I just started my podcast. I was so afraid for so long of failing, and we just jumped in the deep end and said, we're going to do it. So yeah, sometimes we don't do what we're afraid of. And so my podcast is opening this week, and go see it at leslievernick.com/podcast. But this challenge is for this moving beyond. And so Wednesday, we're going to talk about our fear of failure. Same thing, move on the Facebook page later on the day. That's going to be at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. Now, if you can't make the live Facebook pages every day, they're going to be recorded. You just can go into the Facebook thing and look at the video and watch it. It's much more fun if you participate, but you can get access to it, and it's for life. We won't close down that page. You can go back and re-listen to it, but every day you will get an email. So even if you don't get a chance to participate live, you'll get the tools that you need to do. But the opportunity to be with one of our coaches and me for a whole hour talking about that specific topic will be exponentially helpful in that moving beyond that stuck place. And then Thursday, we're going to talk about moving beyond these unrealistic expectations that my husband will respect my boundaries. But he won't, right? How many of you want your husband or your friend to be honest with you and she's not? Or you want your husband to be more responsible and he isn't. And how do we manage having realistic expectations or reasonable expectations that aren't realistic because this person isn't going to do it? And we know that the pattern is there, right? And then last, on Friday, we're going to talk about moving beyond people pleasing. Again, same thing. You'll get an email in the morning telling you some things you can do. What's our biggest fear in saying no? All of you know how to say no, but we don't. Why? What's our fear? Fear of rejection, fear of disappointing someone, being guilty, getting guilt tripped, and then not knowing how to deal with that negative emotion, right? So these are some basic wellness tools that we want to equip you with so that the second half of 2022 is on a much better track and trajectory. The people-pleasing group will stay available to you after the week for you to have that support from one another that you build those relationships with. And so we invite you just to give yourself a gift, $17. I mean, you can spend $17 in that week on Starbucks, right? So $17 is not a big price to pay to say, I'm committed to coming to this group and join and be a part of this challenge. I promise you, if you participate, it can really jumpstart the second half of this year and really give you everything you need to start to handle these things internally and externally in your world. So it starts on the 20th. I'm going to give you the times of the Facebook Lives again. Monday's going to be 4 p.m. Eastern time. Tuesday will be noon Eastern time. Wednesday will be 7:30 Eastern time. Thursday will be noon Eastern time, and Friday will be noon Eastern time. And we will have a Facebook Live for at least an hour with me and one of my coaches helping you with your questions. All right? Okay. And you can continue to do this independently, but that's the week we're all going to be focused on helping you do it. You can take the tools, those 5 tools I'll give you every day. Each day you'll get a tool. You can print them out and work on them forever. I still work on the tools because I still get overwhelmed, right? So when you get overwhelmed, what do? Now I know what to do, right? When I have a negative thought, what do? Well, now I know what to do. So it's not that you're never going to have these problems. You're just going to have the tools to know how to deal with them so that you don't feel so stuck and helpless with them. We've done this before, Diana. And what's been your experience as we've done this challenge?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
What's been your experience as you've done this challenge, like last year when we did it?
I just say there's always something that, for me personally, there's always something that I need to reinforce in my life. It's an opportunity to dig deeper and to grow. I think what's really wonderful is that we're doing it in the context of a community where we have some support and accountability, and there's a lot of momentum to just re-examine and you wouldn't believe how just a small change in your life could have such a ripple effect. It's kind of like for me, when I make that choice to stop eating something unhealthy, it just leads to more and more choices that are in that direction. And so it's going to be good. I'm excited to see. And I see people signing up here right now and inviting friends. It truly is a lot of guidance, a lot of support. And you don't even have to think it through. All you have to do is sit and ask the Lord, where am I intended to implement this in my life?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Somebody asked a question if you have to be on Facebook to be a part. You will miss the community part of it if you're not on Facebook because it is a private Facebook page. but you can join Facebook for this purpose and then delete your account afterwards if you want to. So I would highly encourage you to do that. You will be on a private Facebook page, so it will only be open to people who pay for this challenge. And that way we can kind of screen all of that. So once you join, you will get an email every day of that challenge. You will get the access to the Facebook Live page and be a part of that group. And after the challenge, you can go back to the Facebook page and still continue to communicate with women who are in there, hold them accountable, let them hold you accountable to the progress you're making. And some really strong communities have been developed in that people-pleasing group. We've done it now for a couple of years. So we do this once a year in June, and we're really encouraging you. If you could use a shot in the arm right now, and you could use some skills with dealing with these 5 areas: overwhelm, negative thoughts and bad moods, fear of failure, unrealistic expectations, and people pleasing. It's a lot of topics, but they come down to some basic tools that we want to help you implement and experience what it feels like to grow, to be healthier, to feel stronger inside. And I think we can do that best in community with other women, because then we don't feel so stupid. We don't feel so alone. We don't feel so like somebody else's question was our question, but we were too afraid to ask. And so we have that sense of, oh my gosh, we're all in this together. We're all in this together. And if we can create this opportunity to grow together, grow stronger together, that's the church. That's part of what God calls the church to do, to mature, to grow stronger, to be healthier. The best description of a godly woman is not a subservient, silent, submissive woman. The best description of a godly woman is in Proverbs, where it says, strength and dignity are her clothing, and she smiles at the future unafraid. Those are the words that God says, this is what a mature, godly woman looks like. She can make her own decisions. She has good relationships. She handles her own money. She has good boundaries. She serves. She helps. She takes care of herself. She's beautifully dressed, right? She's strong. She's wise. She's not afraid. She's not living overwhelmed or anxious or full of negative moods. She's got that dialed down, that she knows how to handle those things. And we want that for you too. So I'm going to go to questions about.
Let me just answer a couple questions here, Leslie. There will be a replay. And when you sign up, you'll sign up with your email so that you will get your email about the podcasts and how to access that. So all that information will be sent to you. And the link to go to is leslievernick.com/challenge to sign up for the challenge.
Yeah. So we're talking about 2 different things here. So we just launched our podcast this week too. So that has nothing to do with the challenge. If you like to listen to teaching that I'm going to do or guests that I'm going to have on our new podcast, you can go to leslievernick.com/podcast, and it'll take you to a place where you can listen to some more stuff that we teach and what I provide. But that has nothing to do with the challenge. Okay. So the challenge is for this 5-day, June 20th, 21st, 24th through the 24th. So that's what this is for today. All right, Diana, I'm going to give you a question. I want you to start with that. I am a total people pleaser. I feel terrible when someone's not happy with me. And then I feel terrible because I overextended myself. What is the middle ground? Will this challenge help me?
Well, the challenge. And, when you were talking, Leslie, one of the things I was thinking about that I really admire about moving through this challenge is the opportunity to really rethink what works and what doesn't work for you personally. And, so you really kind of have to know what works for you personally so that you're not tempted to give in to what someone else wants. I need the question in front of me. Can you read it one more time?
Yeah, I'm a total people pleaser. I feel terrible someone is not happy with me. And then I feel terrible because I overextended myself by doing what they want, right? So what's the middle ground?
The middle ground is really to know what my resources are and what I have to give. And I think that we have to look at our heart. Why am I extending myself? And if it's for people-pleasing reasons, then I have to deal with my heart. What is it about that I'm doing? What do I need from this person that's inappropriate? that I'm not getting from my relationship with the Lord, that I'm not giving myself. If I'm looking to someone else to validate who I am or to validate my worth by doing things for them, then there's an issue with my heart. And the balance is that I've got my own oxygen mask on. Now I've got my resource, and I've spent adequate time strengthening myself. I've ate well today. I've got all my work done. I have some extra time that I can give a friend, and when I do so, I don't do it begrudgingly. I do it with a pure heart, and I just give without expecting anything in return. And so I think one of the things I like about this challenge is, and like you said, it gets a little bit complicated. I don't think it's easy to think through these things and what a boundary is and what it isn't, and where do I begin and where do I end, and what's selfish and what's not selfish. So it gives us an opportunity to really think about what works. And so Coach Elise told me something that I always go back to. And she said, if I'm feeling irritated, or if I'm feeling aggravated about something that I'm doing for somebody, there's an indication there that I've overextended myself and I needed to set a boundary. And it's not setting a boundary with them, it's setting a boundary with myself, like I'm doing too much, right?
So that's the red flag for you. It's the red flag. So we don't want you to stop pleasing people. This isn't the goal in our challenge of moving beyond people pleasing on Friday. I love to please people. I'm doing this. I'm spending an hour of my time with all of you, and I absolutely love it. I'm not going to get off this call and say, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I really resent that. I'm not going to do that. I am giving freely, and I love, love, love it. All right. Here's where you know you're not loving it, is when you feel that icky feeling afterwards. It's like giving your ATM card to someone and saying, here, help yourself. You would never, ever do that, right? Here's my ATM card. Here's my password. Get what you need. You would never do that. Why? Because you know that someone who would take advantage of that would put you in the red, and that would stress you out. But yet you're doing that with your time and your energy. So I think Diana has a really good point in saying, ask yourself, what you said, I feel terrible when someone is not happy with me. This is the red flag for you. Why do you need, with a capital NEED, that person to be happy with you? Don't you? Part of growing up is understanding that people will sometimes be unhappy with us. People were unhappy with Jesus sometimes when they didn't get what they wanted him to do. His family was unhappy with him. His disciples were unhappy with him. That doesn't mean you're bad. This is where this idea of I'm selfish if they're unhappy with me. No, you're not. But if I call my hairdresser and say, hey, can you get me in tomorrow? And he says, no, I'm going to be unhappy with him. That doesn't mean I'm never going to go to him or that I don't like him, but I am going to be unhappy because I want what I want. We all do. So your no is going to make someone unhappy, a child, a husband, a friend, a mother. If you tell your mother, no, I'm not coming home for Christmas this year, or I'm not spending money on Christmas gifts this year, they're going to be unhappy with you. And this is your growth to say, I can bear someone's unhappiness with me without it destroying my self-image or my day, right? Or my day. I'm still a good person. I'm a kind and loving person. And yeah, sometimes I have to say no. Sometimes I have to say no. And I hope you can do that. And if you can't do that, this challenge is for you. It will help you. The overwhelm, the negative thoughts and feelings like, oh, I'm a bad person because they're unhappy with me. They don't like me because I'm unhappy. And you've got to learn to recognize that and deal with that. And this challenge will really be helpful for you. I'm going to go to question 2.
Okay.
My husband always says that a godly wife will serve him always. But how do I have boundaries while being a godly wife? Will this challenge talk about that?
Well, what about that word always? That's pretty extreme. That's pretty extreme. I couldn't live up to always. I would say that right there, right? And the question was, how do I be a good Christian wife? Is that the question?
So will this challenge talk about that? How do I have boundaries while being a godly wife?
Oh, I don't think we can be godly without boundaries.
Yeah.
I mean, God really sets some clear boundaries in Scripture for us, correct?
Mm-hmm. And let's make it more extreme. So I'm going to make this up. My husband says that a godly wife will always have sex whenever I want. My husband says a godly wife will always sleep naked. My husband says a godly wife will never work outside the home. My husband says a godly wife will always keep silent in an argument because I don't think that's being submissive when you argue with me. So your husband has some ideas about what a godly wife is. So here's your dilemma. Is your role and job to live up to what his idea of a godly wife is, or what God says a godly wife is? Right? So we have a people-pleasing class after we're done with the challenge, and we go deep into this because sometimes our husband has become our God. He has the power to define us as good or bad because we didn't live up to his expectations. And probably you're not going to ever live up to his expectations because his expectations are unrealistic and unreasonable, really. Okay. So the question is, and let's just put this in a different context for some of you. My mother says a good daughter calls her every day. And my mother says a godly daughter always honors her no matter what. My mother said, people can tell us, the disciples said, hey, this is what a good leader does. He fights for his people. So why aren't you fighting in the Garden of Gethsemane? I'm going to cut off the soldier's ear. And they were disappointed with Jesus because this is what the Messiah is supposed to do. Understand, people are going to have all kinds of definitions for who you are supposed to be, right? A Christian counselor is supposed to do this, or a godly wife is supposed to do this, or a good mom would do this. And that's where your clarity of identity, who are you and who has God made you to be and become, isn't dependent on what other people say you are. It's what God says you are. And this requires some deeper work. So I would really encourage you to put your marriage in its proper place. Your husband is not the definition of who you are. God is. And so how do you want to be a godly wife? What does that look like for you? And those are your boundaries, right? Mm. And that's some work to do. And I would encourage you and invite you to sign up for this challenge. All right. Is this challenge best for married women? I am separated and wonder if this would help me. This challenge is for all women. All right. All women feel overwhelmed, whether you're married or not. All women feel negative thoughts and bad moods. All women struggle with fear of failure. I shouldn't say all women. Women like me. Women who have work to do. Maybe there's a woman who doesn't have any of these things, but I haven't met her yet. So all of us, all humans, because we're human, struggle with these things. All right. We all struggle with fear of failure. We all struggle with unrealistic expectations of people that we keep hoping, we call it hopium, that they're going to be different and they're not. And then we keep getting disappointed because we keep hoping that they're going to be different and they're not. And then, a lot of us struggle with people pleasing. And I'm not saying don't be a good people pleaser. I love to be a people pleaser, but I also am capable of saying no and not feeling icky that someone's disappointed in me, that I can't do more, right? So if I can give you $100 and you're disappointed that I can't give you $1,000, I'm okay with that because I gave you what I could without resenting you, right? If I can give you an hour of my time and you're disappointed that I can't give you all day, that's not my problem. That's your problem. And I'm not going to take it as I'm a bad person because I couldn't do everything you wanted me to do. But that's a mindset shift. And that's an internal shift in your inner works. That's your work to do, right? Because if I need everybody to be happy with me and like me and, tell me I'm wonderful all of the time, I'm pretty dependent on them for who I am. And that's not what God says. All right. I have been told that I am not allowed to decide boundaries by my pastor. That is not biblical. If that is not biblical, is that true? I would say, what do you think? What do you think based on what you've learned today? Mm-hmm. Right? So it's almost like saying you're not allowed to have a lock on your door. I don't know. If I want a lock on my door to feel safe, I'm not allowed to have one because that means you don't trust people. I mean, people can tell you whatever you're not allowed to do. You have to decide whether you're going to believe them and if you're going to give them the authority to make that decision in your life. Mm. Anything you want to add to that, Diana?
Yeah, I always I would ask the pastor to really define what he means by that, and to explain that a little bit more, because that's a huge statement. And what is his definition of a boundary? I think there's some context to that as well, that might be around that. But yeah, I maybe would ask him to please define and to provide you with some examples. And I think we need to be careful when someone's in a position of authority, that we don't take everything they say at face value, that we think for ourselves. And that's really goes back to knowing who we are, those self boundaries and self stewardship, and challenging all of that with the Word of God. Right?
I love that. I love that. Even asking your pastor, not in a challenging way, but just in a curiosity kind of way. Give me a couple examples of what you mean. Like, am I not allowed to say, no, I don't want to have sex tonight? Am I not allowed to say that? So what do you mean by that? Right? And let him clarify, because it might be that you're misunderstanding him.
One of the other things that comes up regarding this question for me, Leslie, is that, when we set boundaries, or when we even talk about boundaries in this context, we learn so much about people. We learn where they're coming from, what they think, and that's all really good information. And so finding out a little bit more about what he thinks about boundaries and whether or not they're appropriate, I think also can tell, maybe not just him, but also can tell me, am I really safe or healthy to be around these individuals? And to what extent do I want to invest in this relationship? So there's this context of knowing my boundaries and what I'm okay with and not, really provides and protects me through life as well. Mm-hmm. It gives me so much to work with.
Mm-hmm. The Bible tells us in Proverbs to guard our heart above all else, for it is the wellspring of life. And our heart is our essence, right? So guarding doesn't mean we put barriers up there, but there is a boundary, right? And the boundary is, we're to listen to wise people and we're to ignore foolish people. We're to be able to mature so that we can discern the difference, right? Because sometimes there are wolves in sheep's clothing that sound right. They tickle our ears. And even what I'm saying, check it out with the scriptures. Don't just take my word for it. I think it's really important that we have, as women, especially as women of faith in conservative Christian circles, have kind of been taught not to think for ourselves, that to defer our thinking power to a male, the pastor, the husband, the father, that somehow we're not capable of thinking for ourselves. But as I look at the Bible, I see God using some women in amazing ways, in very strong ways, who had to think for themselves. Esther, Deborah, Ruth, the Hebrew midwives, Mary, the mother of Jesus. These women, Proverbs 31 women, these are powerful women in the Bible that God honored and used and instructed. And they didn't get their marching orders from a man. They got their marching orders from God. And I think God is calling us as women not to be rebellious and angry women because we've been taught to live like children as women and wives, but to say, hey, I don't think that's God's call for me to live as a child in a marriage where I don't have a say, I don't have a voice, I don't have a no. Even a child, we just talked about it, at 2 years old develops what? Their no. So if your pastor is saying as a woman, you're not allowed to have a no if you're a married woman, I'm quite sure that's not biblical. But you're going to have to think for yourself and who you decide to listen to and who you decide not to listen to. And that requires you growing your discernment muscle. And God calls us to. God calls us to learn to discern truth from error, good from evil, because evil can sometimes look pretty good. All right. Let me see. What other question? How do we set boundaries when they aren't respected? I think we've kind of talked about that. If I can't control him ignoring these discussions, how can that be a boundary for me? We have to talk about the kids to co-parent, but he continues to ignore me. Then I think what you might say is, I'm inviting you to co-parent with me. I'm inviting you to co-labor on a decision. If you don't want to make a decision, I'll make it on my own. Right? That's your boundary. So I'm inviting you to do this. And if you choose not to, then you've left me no other option but to make the decision without your input, and make it. And he may not like those decisions. And then I think you can just say, you are welcome to give me your input, and you're welcome to have a discussion with me. And I would love to do that. But if you're not willing to do that, you leave me no choice but to make the decision. I'm not willing to stay in limbo land about their education. I'm not willing to stay in limbo land about whether they go to the party or not, or whatever it is. And just, this is what I'm willing to do, and this is what I'm not willing to do. I'm willing to have a conversation with you about it. And if you don't want to participate, then I guess I'll be the parent and make the decision. Right? I think instead of staying paralyzed, like, oh, I can't make a decision. Of course you can make a decision. You're a parent. And if he doesn't want to be a parent or be a part of decision making, that tells you something, but it doesn't paralyze you from being a parent. All right. Husband drove with the kids drunk. So what do I do to protect them?
They're asking me, Leslie.
Well, I'm asking, give your 2 cents.
That is a big one. You really can't control, boy, you really can't control if he's going to step in the car that way with the children. But it's our job to step in and to provide and to protect for our children. So I'd have to think really long and hard, what could I put in place so that doesn't happen again? I definitely would set a verbal boundary with him, that if this happens again, I'm gonna contact the authorities, child welfare, whatever it takes. It's not going to happen again. If I, I might suggest that if you come home, or that I find you driving drunk again, I'll contact the authorities with the children. Just setting the boundary. Kids can't be in the car when you're drinking. That's it. Period. This actually happened to a relative of mine. And what she ended up doing in that instance was she put other things in place so that her spouse, who was her ex-spouse at the time, would never pick up the children any longer. She relied on other people. So, if he's going to sneak and hide, you can't protect for that or provide for that. But I certainly would put other things in place. I would not rely on him to drive the kids if it's a habitual thing.
I think sometimes it depends on the children's ages too. So I think that if they're older children and they know that daddy's been drinking, to give them permission to say, I'm not getting in the car, and especially if they have a teacher to go to or whatever. I mean, I think there's really, the last thing that you want is to have, I have a friend whose husband did that and one of her kids was killed. So he drove drunk, and terrible results. So I think this is where this is not okay. And, you can say this in a shaming, blaming, accusing, attacking way, which is less likely to get a positive response. Or you can say, hey, you're a grown up. You think you can drink and drive. I'm not comfortable with that. I am not okay with you ever taking the kids and picking them up if you've had any drinks at all. Are you willing to respect my boundary? Right. And so don't shame about it. Are you willing to respect this boundary? I am way too anxious that, something bad could happen. Are you willing to respect my boundary? So then you, if he's not, or he's willing, then I think that's where you can have the next conversation. What safety measures do you need to put in place if he's not willing to respect your boundary? But I think the question, this makes not you're a bad person for doing this, but this makes me very uncomfortable, and I'm scared, and I don't want to feel scared when our kids are with you. Are you willing to respect this boundary? No taking the kids when you've had any alcohol, period. I don't care how competent you feel or how safe you feel. Are you willing to respect my boundary, period? And if he says no, you're being ridiculous. You can't tell me what to do. Now you know that you have to put much more other measures in place, including giving the kids opportunities to say, no, I'm not getting in the car with daddy because he smells like beer. Right. And if they're capable of calling and or going back into school and telling their teacher, then that's what has to happen. Right. And that's a hard thing, because he's going to be very mad at you, but you don't want to end up with a dead child either. All right. Boundary examples you mentioned were with a partner who's active in behaviors. What about boundaries with a neglectful, passive relationship? I'll start that, and then Dinah, let you get some, again, you have to take care of you. All right. And so I can't do your work for you. So I don't know where you are in. So if let's say he's neglectful and passive, I'm going to describe him as a couch potato. So he doesn't want to talk. He doesn't want to do anything. He's not, engaging. He's not a partner. You're not in a romantic place. You're not in a friendship place. You don't share spiritually. It feels very lonely in your marriage. Okay. So you have a variety of decisions to make about how you do life with this person. So is there other compelling reasons why you would share the house and the finances, even though you don't share a life together? And there might be. For example, you might have small children that you would never feel safe in his care. You might be disabled and not able to work, and you rely on his health insurance. There might be other factors, like all your adult children live in the same neighborhood and you love them coming to your house and spend time with your grandchildren. There might be compelling reasons why you would choose to stay in this arrangement, even though it's not a real relationship. Okay. So your boundaries might be, I choose to stay in this relationship because it has certain benefits for each of us. And I am going to also develop my emotional connection and my support system outside of this relationship. This is this unrealistic expectations. I'm going to detach from my expectation for him to be the husband, for him to show up. He might be the provider, but maybe that's all he is. And maybe that's part of what serves, and I can do some things for him that he needs, like wash, and that works for us right now, but I'm going to remove myself from expecting him to be any different than he is. But now I know I need social friends. I'm going to go on vacation by myself. I'm going to connect with a group of women that I can do dinner with or go out to a movie with, or I'm going to build my life. I'm going to get a job. I'm going to do things that I enjoy. I'm going to fill my bucket in other ways than waiting around depending on him to change, because he may never change. My boundaries are, and these are not on him. You can't set any boundaries on him. My boundaries are, I'm not staying home. I'm going to do what I need to do to create a life that I'm enjoying while still having the basics of safety financially in this relationship. Anything you want to add to that, Diana?
I would just reinforce what you said, that setting the boundary with myself in that situation would be that this is not a real relationship. And what that means is that I'm not going to partner with him on these things, whether it's sharing my thoughts, my feelings, because he doesn't care, or even engaging in mutual activities. And so I guess I would have to be concrete in my own mind regularly, because I think as women, it's natural for us to want to try to get someone to join with us and to partner with us. And so again, I said the first boundary we set is telling myself the truth about the relationship and accepting that the way that this person is behaving is really setting a boundary with me about what I can and cannot do with them. Right. And then also the second boundary is letting go of wanting him to change, waiting for him to change, as you said, or trying to get him to change. So those were the three boundaries that I would set for myself. And then you said it so well, just living your life. You get to live your life.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not the life you thought, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to have to create the life you want. And it might not be your first choice. It might be your second choice, but that can still be a good life. And I think this is where we tend to kind of let ourselves stay in victim mindset. He won't, so I can't, right? And that's not true. The other thing that I might do is, depending on your ability and his ability to hear you, I might verbalize what you just decided. So I might say to him something like this: for the last couple of years, we haven't really connected. You don't seem to want to engage. You don't want to make decisions, whatever they are, put the details in. You don't want to make decisions together. You don't want to talk together. You don't want to go anywhere together. You seem perfectly happy just watching TV. That isn't the kind of life I want to live in my 40s or 60s or wherever you are. That's not the kind of life I want to live as an empty nester or as a parent, whatever it is. And so I feel bad for you, because I don't see you really enjoying your life either. But if that's your decision, I will have to respect that. But I'm going to start building a life of my own. So as you say that, it may jolt him into a little bit of self-reflection, like, oh, I mean, she's not going to sit here with me and watch TV. It may jolt him into a little bit of, Do I want more connection? Do I want to do anything different? You can't make him, but you can say, hey, if this is your decision of wanting to be like this, then I'm going to have to go do this. And that may help him to reflect. Maybe I don't want to do this. Maybe I'm just living in a defeated, depleted place, and I don't know how to do any different. And that could give him a bit of energy to think about that. No guarantees that he will do anything with it, but it's an opportunity. So one of the things I love to tell my women is if God's called you to be his helpmate, that doesn't mean dragging him to where he doesn't want to go, but it does mean speaking the truth in love, right? To speak the truth in love and share, what you're observing. Like, you seem to have given up on living life and giving up on having any relationships. Is that okay with you? And if that's okay with him, say, well, it's not okay with me. That's totally boring. And I don't want to live like that. I'm going to go find some girlfriends to go to the movies with or go on vacation with, because that's what I want to do. And I think that's important for you to know what's important to you. Okay. So I'm going to wind this up for today because I have another class I'm supposed to be at, which I took a break from to be here. And so I want to be able to get back to this other class. But I encourage you, if this was helpful, and this is kind of what our Facebook Live is going to be like, but it's going to be private, so you can be more personal in what you want to say and what you want to share. We'll interact back and forth. Our coaches, one coach and I will be on every single Facebook Live. We will be talking about each day those particular challenges. So moving beyond overwhelm, moving beyond negative thoughts and emotions, moving beyond our fear of failure, moving beyond our unrealistic expectations, and moving beyond people pleasing. So what I want you to do right now is imagine what would be different about your life if even just one of those things, overwhelm, negative thoughts, your fear of failure, your unrealistic expectations that he's going to get off the couch, and your people pleasing, just one of them. Imagine what would be different for you if that wasn't a struggle anymore. What would be different for you if you knew when that happened and you had an overwhelm or you were in a negative mood, that you knew what to do and it didn't grab you and ruin your day? What would be different for you? And is it worth committing $17, like a couple Starbucks, and a week of time, 5 hours, to taking care of you, to helping?
I think you're worth it,
Yeah, I think you are.
We talk about people pleasing. We do so much for others, and we often don't take the time for ourselves.
That's right.
It's a gift to you.
Yeah. And it's like buying yourself a bouquet of flowers at the store, and they're more than $17. I was going to buy myself a bouquet. It was $29. Something, and these are getting expensive, right? But I'm worth it. Like, my husband's not going to buy them for me. That's not his thing. He will buy other things, but not that. But I like flowers, and I'm going to buy my own self flowers because I like to see them. If there's something here that is important to you, and if you're still here, it is, then I would encourage you. The $17 is nothing really. It's a commitment to say I'm in, and it helps people show up a little bit more because they paid money to show up. One person last year said, this was the best $17 I have ever spent in my life. I promise you, if you come and show up and do the work, it can save you time in therapy. It really can, because you will get the tools that you need to change the things inside that keep you stuck. So we will be back. I don't know when we will be back. I didn't look at the next schedule. I think, do you know when we're coming back, Martha? I don't know when. I'm not Martha. Do you know when we're coming back? Diana, Martha's on the back end, but
look.
Maybe you can tell me, Martha, on
our. Let's see. We actually tomorrow, you and Jen are going to be on at 7:30 at night.
See? I didn't even know. I do day to day.
We're going to be talking about, are you over functioning in your family?
Okay, so this is kind of an extension of people pleasing, like you are doing too much. And if you are over functioning in your family, Coach Jen and I will be here at 7:30 p.m., same place, talking about over functioning. Why do we do it? Just like, why do we do people pleasing? Why do we pick up all our kids' clothes when they're still in high school and they should be doing that for themselves? Why are we nagging people to do what they are supposed to be responsible? Why are we waking our kids up when they should be setting their own alarm? Sometimes we're over functioning and keeping someone else in a non-growth, immature position, which is only harming them. So we're going to talk about that tomorrow with Coach Jen. Thanks, Diana. I appreciate you being here.
Lovely.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for showing up, and we'll see you tomorrow night, hopefully. Sign up for people pleasing at leslievernick.com/challenge, not people pleasing, for that challenge. All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.